Lonely lumberjack paid $2 for woman with sack on her head at auction marries her when she says name. Oregon Territory. Spring of 1869. A dust-worn outpost along the Oregon Trail. The scent of dry timber, horse sweat, and tobacco hangs thick in the air. Around the makeshift auction stage, nothing more than planks nailed to wagon crates. A crowd of men gathers. Rough hands, dull eyes, hungry hearts, and hollow souls. The kind of place where even decency forgets to stop. A man with a faded blue vest and rusted deputy badge slams a wooden gavel onto the post. "All right, last one for the day," he bellows. "She ain't got no name. Ain't shown her face. Sack over the head since Missouri. Says she can work. Says she'll obey. Starting bid, $2. Who's brave or drunk enough to marry the mystery?" Laughter breaks like a whip. "Maybe she's a witch under that thing," one man shouts. "Or a corpse," says another. "Might as well marry the damn sack." A few men spit into the dirt and turn away. Others stay to watch, nudging each other, waiting for someone foolish enough to raise a hand. On the wooden platform, she stands still, barefoot, dusty, her hands bound in front with fraying twine. The sackcloth over her head is stained, too large, tied tight at the neck. Only her breathing betrays her fear. It comes quick, shallow, controlled, but barely. Her fingers twitch, clench, release. She's no good to anyone if she won't even speak, the auctioneer grumbles. No one steps forward, not for a long minute. Then the crowd parts like water. From the back, a tall figure walks forward. Broad shoulders beneath a canvas coat, a face shaded by the brim of a black hat, worn but clean. His boots are heavy with mud, his shirt sweet-lined, and his accent is wrapped in leather strips. A man who has lived more with trees than people. $2, he says. Silence falls like snow. The auctioneer squints. "You sure, mister? I said what I said." His voice is low, not angry, not eager, just certain. A few men snicker. Must be desperate. The auctioneer clears his throat, nervous now. "You do not want to see what you are buying." The man tilts his head toward the woman, still unmoving beneath the sack. "I ain't buying a face," he says quietly. "I am marrying a person." Even the wind stops. No one laughs this time. "Fame," the auctioneer mutters. "Silas Boone. The profession. Lumberman, Northridge." The auctioneer scribbles. "Fine. Let it be known that Mr. Silas Boone, resident of Oregon Territory, has entered lawful marital contract under the eyes of God and the witness of this court." He shoves the paper towards Silas, who signs without flinching. Then he turns to the woman. "You're now legally wed, miss. Say your name for the record." The sack shifts slightly, no sound at first, then very softly, so softly one has to lean forward to hear. The voice comes. "Annabelle Crow." Silas freezes. The crowd leans in. The auctioneer raises an eyebrow but says nothing. Silas's eyes widen. Just a flicker. Then they harden again, fixed on the sack, on the voice that now echoes in his mind 3 winters ago in the snow in the dark. A voice he never forgot. A name he never heard until now. And suddenly the forest silence, the bloody snow, the firelight in that frozen cave. It all rushes back. He steps off the platform slowly. Aches the woman's arm. Not roughly, not urgently, just firmly enough to say, "You are safe now." No one stops them as they walk away. Not a word from the crowd, just the creak of boots over planks, and the whisper of a name that still trembles between them. Annabelle Crow. The forest closed in around them as they walked, the trail narrowing to a thread of broken pine needles and packed earth. The light dimmed beneath the canopy, sun straining through the thick boughs like it too was unsure whether to come closer. Annabelle said nothing. The sackcloth still covered her head, drawn tight around her neck, the edges fluttering in the evening breeze. Once the wind caught it enough to tug sideways, she reached up instantly, adjusting it with both hands, keeping her face hidden. Silas Boone walked several paces ahead, leading the old mule that carried the few supplies they had been allowed from the outpost. He did not turn around, nor try to speak. He simply kept to the trail, every so often, glancing toward the trees, as if listening for more than wind. The silence between them was not awkward. It was a silence carved from different kinds of survival. They reached the cabin before dusk. It was built from dark pine, not large, but tight, strong, clean, set against a rise of earth that blocked the worst of the north wind. There was a stone chimney, a stack of wood beside the door, and a rusted horseshoe nailed above the frame. Silas reached the door, pushed it open with a creak, then stepped aside. "You pick where you stand," he said quietly. "No one's going to place you anymore." Annabelle stepped in slowly. Her movements were cautious but not weak. She did not remove the sack. Her steps made almost no sound across the smooth wooden floor. She did not sit at the table. She crouched against the far wall back to the room, hands resting on her knees, silent. Silas stepped in behind her, placed a bundle of firewood near the hearth, and began to work at the stove. No questions, no commands, only the occasional sound of iron shifting or water boiling. The scent came slowly, warm, thick, real, something with spice, quill of cinnamon, the salt of smoked meat. He worked in rhythm as if he had done this 1,000 times before. Annabelle did not move. When the food was ready, Silas placed a wooden bowl near her. She flinched slightly, but did not turn. He sat at the table with his own bowl, neither rushing nor staring. After several minutes, her voice came muffled but audible. "Oh, what is this?" Silas looked at his bowl, stirred once, and said, "I call it the meal for the last one standing." A pause, then a quiet sound, almost a breath of a laugh, but stifled, withdrawn. He added, "Used to make it for myself after long days in the woods. Then I started making 2 bowls, even when there was no one to eat the second." She turned her head slightly, enough to glance sideways beneath the hem of the sack. On the chair beside him sat a second bowl, identical, steam rising from it. No one else in the room. Silas gestured toward it. "I used to set it for my wife after the war, after the trees took more than they gave. Just a way to say I came home alive again." He paused. "Now I set it for you and for her." The silence held. The fire crackled. Annabelle reached for her bowl slowly. Her hands trembled faintly, but she gripped the spoon and drew it under the sackcloth without removing it. She ate in silence, every bite small, careful, but she finished it. That night, while Silas washed the bowls in a tin basin near the stove, Annabelle remained by the wall, her knees drawn up, arms wrapped around them, watching, not speaking. But for the first time since he met her, she was not shaking. That night, after the fire had died down to a steady glow, and the last embers of supper had been cleaned from the bowls, Silas sat alone before the hearth. He had not lit a lantern. He did not need it. The fire light was enough, casting long shadows that danced along the log walls like silent memories. Outside, the wind moaned through the trees, long, low, and familiar. He leaned forward, elbows on knees, letting the warmth touch his face. But it was not warmth he felt, not entirely. It had been 3 years ago, a winter thicker than any before. The kind of cold that turned pine, needles into glass and lungs into fire. He had gone too far north for timber. Greedy for wood, stubborn with pride, he slipped on a slope, twisted his leg, and fell into a snowbank where no trail existed. By the time the snow covered his back, he had stopped fighting. But then, hands rough, calloused, a pull, dragging him. He remembered the pain, the jarring weight of his body moving against rock, then darkness. He awoke to fire, a small cave hidden behind a curtain of ice. The fire cracked and hissed beside him, and the smell, something earthy, bitter, like boiled bark, filled his nostrils. Across from him sat a figure, a woman. Her face was hidden beneath a sackcloth tied carefully, just like the one in the cabin now. She wore layers of scavenged wool and leather, boots stitched from scraps. Her hands moved with precision as she poured a ladle of steaming liquid into a tin cup. When she spoke, her voice was neither high nor low, only soft, measured, tired. "You do not need to know who I am," she said. "But I am not going to let you die." He had tried to speak, but no words came. "Drink this," she continued. "It is pine bark and dry lichen. It will help the fever." He remembered the taste. Bitter, but he drank. She had wrapped his leg, set it against hot stones, kept the fire going through the night. He faded in and out, fighting the cold, the pain, and whatever dreams tried to steal him away. When he woke again, morning, light blue and cruel, she was gone. Only the fire remained, low and guarded, and beside it, folded neatly, was a square of cloth, embroidered, purple flowers stitched in uneven thread no larger than a palm, a token, or perhaps a message. He kept it, still had it, folded inside his coat pocket. And now in the cabin behind him, a woman sat with the same voice, the same quiet hands, the same sackcloth over her face, and a name. Annabelle Crow. He closed his eyes, leaning further into the fire. He did not need proof. He had felt it the moment she had spoken on that auction stage. Not the name, the sound. The woman who had saved him had not wanted to be seen, not wanted to be known. And here she was again, still hidden, still nameless to the world, but not to him. He did not tell her that night. He let the memory live inside him, a silent agreement between past and present. He glanced back toward the small shape huddled near the far wall, sack still on her head, back still turned. The same fear, the same need to disappear. But this time, Silas thought she was not alone, and that maybe was the start of something that could live beyond snow. The forest held its breath that morning. Mist clung low to the roots, curling around the base of the trees like secrets too shy to rise. A soft wind passed through the needles above, high and slow, as if even it did not want to interrupt. Annabelle stepped outside the cabin alone. She moved quietly, arms folded across her middle, and walked toward the tall pine that stood like a sentinel at the edge of the clearing. The sack still covered her head, but her steps no longer wavered. Her spine was straighter now, not proud, but no longer bowed. At the base of the tree she sat. She turned her face slightly to where the early sun cut through the branches. She reached up with trembling hands and loosened the knot behind her neck. The sack slid up just far enough to let her breathe open face to the wind. Her mouth, her nose, a sliver of cheek. It was not defiance. It was a beginning. Silas saw her from the sideyard where he knelt beside a wooden basin, oiling the teeth of his saw. He did not rise, did not call out, but after a moment he spoke low, steady, as if saying it more to the trees than to her. I once got hurt bad, deep winter, got turned around near Black Ridge. I should have died out. There. His fingers moved over the blade, cleaning, but someone found me, pulled me into a cave, saved my life. Annabelle did not turn. She wore a sack over her head, would not say her name, barely let me see her hands. He paused, but I remember her voice. He turned his head just slightly, not to face her directly, but to let his words carry fuller. Your voice sounds just like hers. There was a stillness and then a sound, the soft scratch of fabric sliding over skin. He did not move, not even when he felt her eyes on him. When he finally looked up, she was staring straight at him. The sack lay in her lap. Her face was not deformed. It was not monstrous. It was human, but it bore a mark no one could miss. A long curved scar ran from her right temple to just above the line of her jaw. Not fresh, not bleeding, but deep, permanent, as though fingers, cruel and frantic, had tried to claw something from her that would not come free. She met his gaze, no longer hiding, but not proud either. Only bare. Her voice came in a whisper. The man who ran the boarding house where I worked, he told me I could keep a room if I gave extra. She swallowed. I said, no. He did not like that. She looked down for a breath, then back to Silas. He came at me. I fought back, pushed him. He slipped. His head hit the stove. She stared past him now into memory. Aim died. I ran. Silas's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. They said I killed him on purpose, that I lured him, that it was all planned. Her voice wavered. There were no witnesses. No one believed me. She looked at her own hands. They called me a liar, a temptress, a killer. Silas stood, wiping his hands on a cloth. Annabelle went on, her tone low and even. They sold me off to pay his debts, passed me along from one hand to another like cattle. They covered my face to make it easier, to make me nothing. She looked at the sack in her lap. I wore this so people would not look at me like I was poison, so they would not see the scar and decide what I was worth before I even spoke. She looked up at him again, eyes glassy but fierce. I did not ask to be saved. I did not ask to be bought, but I am tired of hiding. Silas did not step forward. He did not touch her. He only nodded. Thank you, he said, for telling me. His voice was steady, warm, real. You did not have to, but you did. She blinked hard, but no tears fell. Only breath. And in that breath, something shifted. For the first time since she arrived, she was not a shadow. She was a woman with a name, a story, and a face. And Silas had seen all three, and turned away from none. The sun crept slowly through the forest the next morning, its light, golden and tentative, spilling through the narrow window above the table. Dust mote spun lazily in the beam like tiny spirits dancing between the wood-grain walls, blessing the quiet. Inside the cabin, the air was still, not with fear, not anymore, but with the hush of understanding, like breath held in space after something fragile has been shared and carefully received. Annabelle had barely spoken since the day before, but she had not reached for the sack. She no longer pulled it over her head before sleeping, no longer kept it folded at the foot of her bed like a shield waiting for battle. Her hair, untied and tangled from sleep, lay quietly against her shoulders as she rose from the cot. Her steps remained cautious, her posture guarded, but something in her presence had shifted. Something small, like the ground thawing beneath snow. She blinked at the light pouring through the window and moved toward the table, expecting the usual, a tin of coffee, the wooden bowl she washed nightly, the leftover spoon. Instead, she stopped short. There was something new waiting for her. A small mirror. It stood upright, silver-framed, aged at the edges, but polished to clarity. It leaned against a smooth wedge of pine, angled perfectly to catch the light of the rising sun, so that it would illuminate, not expose. Beside it hung a scarf, sea-green silk, faded slightly in parts, but soft and carefully folded, like it had been treasured once, maybe still was. There was no note, no gesture pointing toward it, just the mirror and the scarf placed there as if they had always belonged to that table, and as if she had always been meant to find them. Annabelle stared at the objects for a long time. She did not move, not at first. The fire in the stove had gone low, and only the crackling of old pine and the occasional creak of the beams overhead filled the room. Outside the forest began to stir, the rustle of a bird in the branches, the slow drip of dew from the eaves. She approached the table slowly, as if afraid the mirror might reflect something she could not bear. But when she reached it, she looked. What she saw was not new. She had felt her face 100 times since the day her world cracked open. She knew the ridges of the scar, the path it carved down her cheek like a brand that never asked permission. Her hand lifted. She touched the mark lightly the way one might touch a name etched into stone. Familiar, inevitable, but this time under the sun through clean glass, she did not WSE. The scar was still there. It always would be, but so was the woman behind it. Her gaze lingered, then shifted to the scarf. She lifted it with both hands. It slipped through her fingers like river water. Cool, gentle, kind. There was care stitched into its every fiber. She brought it to her head, not to hide the scar, but to shape what others would see, to soften the outline, to take control of her own image, not out of shame, but of choice. The scarf settled into place like it belonged there. In the mirror, a new figure emerged. Not the hunted girl from the auction. Not the ghost from the snowstorm, but a woman, full, upright, still carrying what she had lived through, but no longer buried by it. Behind her came a sound. Soft boots on plankwood. She did not turn. She did not need to. Silas stood in the doorway, one shoulder leaning against the frame. He had entered without a word, as was his way. But the look on his face was not one of caution or surprise. It was quiet reverence. He tilted his chin toward the scarf. "That used to be my wife's," he said, voice steady. "She wore it whenever she needed to feel like herself again." Annabelle's fingers brushed the silk near her temple. "I thought maybe it would suit you too," he added. She turned slightly toward him, not flinching, not defending. He held her gaze, unwavering. Then with a voice as soft as moss and just as anchoring, he said, "Anyone who tries to make you ashamed of what you live through is blind. A beat passed and the blind do not get to judge beauty." Her throat tightened. The tears came slow, but they came. Not sharp, not desperate, but warm, cleansing. She looked at herself again. Then gently she reached out and laid her palm flat against the mirror, meeting her reflection halfway. And for the first time in a very long time, Annabelle Crow let herself be seen. The piece they had carved in the woods did not last unchallenged. It never did, not in these parts. Trouble came on horseback, riding alone beneath a sky bruised with stormlight. The man was lean, long-legged, his duster torn from trail wind and mean miles. His eyes gray, sharp, merciless, cut through the saloon crowd like a blade through ripe hide. He called himself Cutter, and Cutter was